Good morning, everyone. Namaste, Mumbai, and bonjour, Maurice. Thank you, CMO Asia, for giving me this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be amidst you today at the 10th anniversary of the World Women Congress and to be recognized as a woman who stands as a beacon of hope to all those who have been through a traumatic and life-threatening experience. If I'm here today, it's because I have a story to tell and to share my new sense of purpose. First, let me introduce myself. Well, thank you, Mr. Pandit, for introducing me, but I'll do it again, and set the scene for the reasons that bring me on this stage. My name is Priya, and I'm 47 years old. By profession, I'm a banker, and I head the customer experience department. On a personal note, I was married for 20 years, and out of this union was born my daughter, Shefali. Today, I'm not here in my capacity as the head of customer experience, but as a woman who has lived a traumatic experience and has fallen to rise. I have divided my story in 3 parts, starting with the tragic event itself. Before I start, I would like to mention that I will be sharing a few pictures that may be disturbing, but I believe it's an important part of my story that has impacted my new sense of purpose. So 14 months ago, on the 8th of December 2021, more precisely, my daughter and I went through a deeply distressing and disturbing incident. I was left completely shattered and broken when my husband attempted to atrociously stab me and my daughter. Now, to revisit this tragic event we have been through electrifies me. It sends shockwaves rippling through me as I recall what we endured that fateful day. My late husband and I went to court in the morning to sign our divorce petition, which was of mutual consent. Since my name was wrongly spelled out on the divorce petition, it had to be amended. That gave us a full hour to have an open-heart conversation. As far as I recall, this was the most candid conversation we've had like friends, and truly wishing each other the best. We acknowledged that this was the point where our relationship was meant to last as a couple, but we would remain friends, and as parents, we would continue to assume our responsibilities towards Shefali. During our conversation, he was over-apologetic and desperately asked for forgiveness, a behavior I didn't understand at that point in time, which I thought was excessively demanding, as he insisted that I gave him the assurance that we would part without any grudge, and neither of us would come out bitter of this situation. But later, I understood that the forgiveness was for the act that he had planned. Later that day, he came home with an envelope. At first glance, I thought it contained the divorce papers, and he wanted to talk about it. He asked me if I could make coffee and if we could talk for 2 minutes. I hesitated for a moment in my head, asking myself if there was anything left unsaid. And then I thought, okay, let me hear him out. I went into the kitchen, which was in the middle of the house, and stood facing the coffee machine, which was the furthest point to the kitchen entrance. My back was facing the kitchen door when I heard a strange gushing noise. I only turned around to see him taking a butcher's knife out of the envelope he brought with him and he forced himself onto me. He slashed me several times, and I narrowly escaped from my carotid artery being severed by 2 millimeters. My tendon was cut, was jutting out of my wrist, and he left me with gashes all over my body as I tried to protect myself from his rage-fueled attacks. My daughter, who was in her room at that time, heard me yelling and pleading for help, and she flew to my rescue. She bravely and selflessly wrestled with him to grab the knife, and she was stabbed 4 times in her back and around her heart, coupled with deep cuts in her hand. She was ready to sacrifice her own life to save her mother. I was bleeding profusely, confused, and unable to process what was happening. He ran away as we managed to escape through a back door to seek help from the neighbors. He drove to his parents' place, and he stabbed himself in the heart in front of his mother's eyes, who desperately tried to save him. His plan failed as he did not manage to complete his mission. In the envelope, we also found a box of matches, and later we found out that there were 2 gallons of petrol stocked in the boot of his car. This led to the conclusion that his plan was to set our family home on fire and burn us down to ashes and eliminate all evidence. Now, you must be asking yourself the reasons of this demonic act. What drove him into the abyss was a serious mental health issue caused by his inability to consume a double life failure. Firstly, our marriage was ending in divorce, and secondly, his professional life was at stake as he got suspended from work. Now, I have my disclaimer here, and I'm going to show you the pictures of what I looked like on my way to the hospital on the 8th of December, 2021. And this is what I looked like after surgery on the 9th of December, 2021. You will now hear a testimony from Priscilla Mutti, who is my head of HR, after hearing the news.
That D-Day is still very fresh in my mind. The whole management team were gathered, celebrating the farewell party of one of our retiring colleagues. My phone kept ringing non-stop with several missed calls from my husband. It must be something urgent, I said to myself, stepping out of the room to take his call. His voice was shattered when he shouted where I was and where was Priya. Priya had took a day off on that particular day. He then told me that he just received a call from one of his friends, a policeman, knowing that we both worked in the same company, and that both Priya and her daughter have been murdered by her husband. I can't find words to describe my state of mind at that moment, shock shattered. I felt as if the earth was shaking under my feet. A series of questions running in my head. My colleagues around me, noticing my state, were querying me on what happened, and they were all also in a state of shock. We tried to call both Priya and Shefali on their mobile phone in vain, no response. We finally managed to get hold of one of the neighbors who confirmed that they were hurt but alive and on their way to the hospital. What a relief for all of us to hear that they were alive. However, we could still not believe that such a tragedy had happened. to such a joyful and candid person. We put in place a support system, and today we are very amazed and proud of the strength of both mother and daughter, just like the phoenix rising from their ashes. We are amazed on how you both have shown resilience. Let yourself immersed in positiveness. Bounce back without letting it affect your focus on what is important in life and not impact on your job responsibilities and team. We are proud of you, Priya. We are proud of this even better version of you. Your Ganesha has protected you and led you to a new you. Continue to shine, my darling. We love you.
Moving on to part 2 of my story. Now, the aftermath. This is what I lived after the incident. I was in a state of sheer exhaustion, delusion, confusion, as I woke up to this reality while I was pushed out of the operation theater. The taste of blood was still raw in my mouth, and blood had dried in my hair. I tried to recollect where I was and the events that led me in this state. As I slowly came back to my senses, I became increasingly agitated and restless, and there was an urge for me to know the whereabouts of Shefali and if she was all right. I felt the tension rocket as I needed to see her at all cost. My heart was pounding and literally beating outside of my body. And when I caught the first glimpse of her, I felt decompressed, like the steam of a pressure cooker. I was unable to sleep for days. I was shaky, flailing, grasping for answers with some kind of numbness that invaded my head. Everything else was beyond my understanding. And like a pre-recorded message playing incessantly, I kept asking, why? 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 Was I angry? I don't know. If I was, towards who? A dead person? For what reason? For savagely aggressing me and for bringing an end to his life for not owning up to his actions? Or for forgiving him as he requested prior to committing the act? I was immersed in some sort of melancholy and excessively anxious about what people are going to say. How will I pick myself up to go back to work? How would I meet people in society? And what would be their reaction towards me? Will I have to carry a bruised and destroyed image of myself as a victim for the rest of my life? He actually murdered me alive. For all I know, I just wanted to dissociate myself with that incident. I kept screaming in my head, please tell me it's a nightmare, and I would wake up very soon. I scrunched into a little knot. The days passed, and my physical wounds and pain were just too strong to tell another story, or that it was a bad dream. They were burning like hell. The best I can describe it to you was as if someone had taken some chili paste and rubbed it over a raw, open wound. And this sensation was all over my body. All I could allow myself to do was to sit down for long hours, idle, in deep reflection, and let it burn. I also had hormonal imbalances that added to my state. My menstrual cycle went haywire, not to mention the million thoughts that clogged my head. And when I couldn't process anymore, I would get in an emotional fit and burst out. I was lost to no boundaries. What I have just described to you is a state of extreme trauma. I asked myself over and over again, what should I do? How will I pick myself up? The only and easiest solution seemed to complete what he had said to do, finish myself. I wouldn't have to worry about anything else. It was one of those 3 a.m. recurring thoughts. I began to hate myself with every fiber of my being. On one of those tormenting nights, I turned around to find my little Shefali sleeping next to me. The world stopped. I looked at that innocent little face lying in the comfort of her mother's presence, and all my thoughts froze. My savior, my Fifi, how could I have been so egocentric for even a split of a second to think about ending my life when she put herself out there for me? Lesson learned. Shefali is a much braver soul than I am. She is my reason to be, and second to my mom for giving me a chance to breathe a second life, which is the title of my story today. Shefali and my mom are both with me today, and I honor them in all humility. To come back to my state, there was little I could do on my own. Both my hands were bandaged, and I had to rely on others to be fed, to be given a bath. Mom brushed my teeth and washed my face every day. The day I removed my stitches, I looked at my hands and I sobbed. I was scarred for life. Those would be the reminders of a painful past. And again, my content for the disclaimer. On the 27th of December 2021, I had 101 stitches removed altogether. And here is what Dr. Jagan, my treating doctor, has to say. Oops, sorry.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Jagan, plastic surgeon. I'll be talking about Mrs. Priya Bhadain, who was my patient and still my patient, with several deep lacerations after aggression by her late ex-husband on 28th of December 2021. Just to let you know that she had several deep lacerations all over the body, which took us 3 hours to deal with, and I was very surprised. She had a very quick recovery, medical-wise and psychological-wise. And she's doing, for the time being, very well, and still having some follow-up with me time to time for the scars. But I can confirm that she's very brave, and after such tragedy, and she picked up very, very quickly, and very glad to tell you that she's back to most probably to quite a normal life.
So after the stitches were removed, I was left to face the world. I sat down one morning and gazed into the horizon. I took stock of what had to be done and how I intended to take my journey forward. I needed to sell his car, a car with a history imbued with blood. Sell our 15-year-old home, where I felt my vibe resonated in every nook and corner, which had turned into a house with a dark history overnight. I had to write to all the banks to know where he held any account. I was absolutely clueless as to what he owned and where he had any debts. I embarked on a journey of discovery. Now I have a last part, so if you can allow me 5 more minutes to finish that. Yeah, is that all right? Thank you. So the last part is the overcoming. Digging deep into my mind, I remembered that my former boss once told me, if you want to achieve results, be in an execution mode and remain focused on what you have to do. That became my guiding principle. One of the most crucial aspects of my recovery process were my counseling sessions with Olivia. She's one of the very few psychologists in Mauritius treating cases of severe trauma. It was imperative for Shefali and I to go for therapy, to seek professional support and to reset the clock. It is sad that today in the 21st century, we still believe that only mentally unstable people consult a psychologist. This is definitely a mind to revisit. So as I looked ahead, it didn't take me long to decide when I wanted to resume work. Priscilla, my head of HR, visited me at home and supportively asked me to take the next 3 months off work to heal and to come back. My immediate response was no. I had a team to lead and other responsibilities. I needed to get back to my routine the earliest possible. 1 month was enough to let my physical wound heal. On the 17th of January 2022, I faced my colleagues at work and the world's heads up. It was an emotionally challenging time for me, but I decided to take it as it comes. Every single person I met made it a point to give me a word of comfort, which I certainly appreciated, but I couldn't stop myself from trying to read their minds out. I felt a considerable amount of pity in their eyes. That evening, I sat down in Mom's prayers room and I cried my heart out. Life took such a dirty turn on me. I even wondered whether I would be able to stand up in the training room at the bank and passionately conduct the usual customer experience trainings. I mustered a lot of courage to go back to work the next day. Another aspect of my journey that I do not want to overlook is the uplift of my spiritual journey that helped me rebuild faith in myself, and I turned to the universe. Mine is called Ganesh, and never in my life have I ever felt his presence as much as I felt that day. Yeah. Great, thank you. So maybe the last part that I want to tell you is, because we don't have much time left, I've built on my own experiences to prepare myself to become mentally more firm and to filter what's important and what is not. So some days are good and some days are bad. But today, we are leading a new life, Shefali and me. And this is what I will call my new beginnings. Unfortunately, I won't have time to show the video of my psychologist, but I'll share it with the rest of the team, and if they want to upload it, they can upload it and you can have a look. And I will just leave you with maybe these few pictures to tell you that the story of Priya and Shefali, reborn to new beginnings. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, everyone.